The Life, Teaching, and Legacy of Martin Luther, Chapter 6, Interview with Cardinal Cajetan. As Luther's 95 Theses gained increasing popularity, the Pope felt he must respond. His first response was to instruct the Augustinian order to deal with the matter, for Luther was one of its members. Justo Gonzalez recounts, "The reformer was called to the next chapter meeting of the order in Heidelberg. He went in fear for his life, for he expected to be condemned and burned as a heretic. But he was surprised to find that many of his fellow friars favored his teaching, and that some of the younger ones were even enthusiastic about it. Others saw the dispute between Luther and Tetzel as one more instance of the ancient rivalry between the Dominicans and Augustinians, and therefore refused to abandon their champion. Eventually Luther was able to return to Wittenberg, strengthened by the support of his order and encouraged by those whom he had won for his cause. The Pope then attempted to summon Luther to Rome, but Frederick the Wise wrote a calming letter to the Pope, pointing out that it was right for German citizens to be tried in their own country. Gonzalez continues, "The Pope then took a different route. The Diet of the Empire, the assembly of princes and nobles, was scheduled to meet in Augsburg under the precedence of Emperor Maximilian. As his legate to that gathering, Leo X sent Cardinal Cajetan, a man of vast erudition. The Pope then sent a letter of safe passage for Luther, summoning him to appear before Cardinal Cajetan at the Diet of Augsburg. Cardinal Cajetan was tasked with getting Luther to recant. If Luther would not recant, Cajetan was to have him bound and sent to Rome. Since the days of Jan Hus, who was burned at the stake for setting the authority of Scripture above the authority of the Pope, church leaders understood that letters of safe passage were not valid in the case of notorious heretics. Notorious heretics were defined as those who were well known for going against the teachings of the Catholic Church. When Luther came before Cardinal Cajetan, he followed the protocol of prostrating himself before the cardinal. Cajetan then warmly bade Luther to rise. It seems that the cardinal fully expected to hear Luther utter a single word, recanto, meaning I recant, after which Cajetan could offer Luther forgiveness. Instead, Luther asked to be instructed concerning his errors. Bainton reports, "The cardinal replied that the chief error was the denial of the Church's treasury of merit, clearly enunciated by Pope Clement VI in the year 1343. Here, said Cajetan, you have a statement by the Pope that the merits of Christ are a treasure of indulgences. Luther, who knew the text well, answered that he would recant if it said so. Cajetan chuckled, leafed through the page to the spot where it said Christ by his sacrifice acquired a treasure. Oh yes, said Luther, but you said that the merits of Christ are a treasure. This says he acquired a treasure. To be and to acquire do not mean the same thing. You need not think we Germans are ignorant of grammar. Exact language is important, especially to theologians and Bible teachers, and Luther had a point in distinguishing between the words are and acquire. The Roman Catholic view concerning the merits of Christ pictured them as a kind of treasure chest from which pardon for sins could be distributed by the Pope and his appointed officers. Luther would argue that the merits of Christ acquired a treasure. He maintained that the perfect life, substitutionary death, and glorious resurrection of Jesus provided everything sinners needed for salvation and godliness, without any regard to the actions of the Pope. Cajetan failed to appreciate this distinction. My son, Cajetan snapped, I did not come to wrangle with you. I am ready to reconcile you with the Roman Church. But since reconciliation was possible only through recantation, Luther protested that he ought not be condemned unheard and unrefuted. I am not conscious, he said, of going against Scripture, the Fathers, the Decretals, or right reason. Luther asked for a council to be convened in order to determine whether his teaching was in line with Scripture, but Cardinal Cajetan replied, "The Pope is above a council, above everything in the Church." "His Holiness abuses Scripture," retorted Luther. "I deny that he is above Scripture." Cajetan then angrily had Luther thrown out of his meeting place, warning Luther not to come back until he was ready to recant. That night Staupitz released Luther from his Augustinian vows. Staupitz apparently took this action both to protect the Augustinians from any reprisals by Rome and to guard Luther's conscience from the guilt of vow breaking. Fearing that he would be bound and sent to Rome in order to be burned as a heretic, as he certainly would have been, Luther escaped from Augsburg in the middle of the night.